All right, everybody. Welcome to an episode of Phil's Philosophy Podcast. And today we are joined with a guest named Chris Green. He is the owner, founder, and operator of Invictus Defense Academy. Chris, how you doing?
Another day in paradise, baby.
Hell yeah, man. So let's start with what got you into I guess self-defense in general. I mean, that's a broad question, but what led you to opening your own academy?
So I had been training Krav Maga since I was in the Marine Corps, and when I left the Marines, I was a police officer in the Marine Corps, and then I became a civilian police officer, and I continued training, and it was my hobby. It was a way I blew off steam,
Hell yeah.
and so it got to a point where I had to medically retire. I had some health stuff going on, and it just got to the point where I was no longer going to be effective or safe at that time, being on the road. So I had to make the difficult decision to retire. And really, it wasn't my decision. It was more of I did it purely out of I don't want to be responsible for somebody getting hurt because I'm just my body and my mind aren't operating the way it should. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So ultimately, had to pull the trigger and retire. That ended a 13-year law enforcement career, and I loved every minute of it. It was great. I would do it all over again if I had the opportunity. But so I retired, and it was one of those, like, I'd already worked my way up to being, second highest ranked instructor in the United States, and AL, my mentor, was like, start an academy, start a gym. And I was like, yeah. And I did the but and him and Hod around it for quite a while. But he finally put enough pressure on me. He's like, fine, I'll do it. And I was very leery about it at the time. I was like, why do I want to make my hobby my profession? Because it's almost like going into business with family. It's dangerous, right?
It is.
So so I was like really like sketchy on it. My business partner at the time, he was actually one of my students, and he had actually come up and started doing the instructor courses through KMG. And so he even was like, yeah, let's do this together. Let's do this together. Because as a pastor, he only worked so many hours out of the week. And he was also teaching the doctor of ministry program over at Western Seminary. So he had more time on his hands, so I was like, well, all right, fine, let's do this. Let's see how this works. And maybe this will help with some of the health stuff I had going on. So we went into business together. We opened July of 2015. We spent our first 2 years at our first location. At our 2-year anniversary, we moved into a really big location where we had a full-size CrossFit floor, a huge freaking MMA floor with 16 bags. It was freaking gargantuan. And it went great for a while. And then he got a wild hair in his ass, and he just bolted on me, and it cost me 30 grand. Yeah, it cost me 30 grand overnight. And so, but I was like, you know what? I'm a Marine. I'm gonna deal with this. So I dealt with it the best I could. I tried managing 2 floors at the same time. I tried doing that. I tried everything, and I was like, it was wearing me down. Ultimately had to take a break. I took about a 5-week break, and I went to a rehab center for PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Got out of that, kind of had was a little revivified and ready to go. So I pushed forward, kept going with the business, and then the Rona hit. And when Rona hit, I was like, what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
So we ended up downsizing almost a little more than half of our size. Like we just moved spaces within the same building we're in, went to a smaller space, saved us a bunch of money, saved the business because we had people like dropping memberships left and right when the Rona hit. And that first couple rounds. And Oregon, I don't know, Oregon's really fucking dumb when it comes to how we've been handling this. Like we just keep shutting down without any real evidence as to why. So that being said, we moved into this new location. I was able to negotiate pretty much all the clients to stay on. And yeah, I mean, we've since reopening, well, let me phrase that. Since unofficially reopening and calling it a protest, and a lot of the attention I got from that, we've grown, we've thrived, and having a great time. And AL is kind of off, kind of in a pre-retirement mode. So now I'm aligned with Master Zev Cohen, and I'm working with him. Hopefully things can calm down in Israel a little bit, so that way I can go out and train with him again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of my Krav Maga journey in a nutshell on the gym.
Right on. That's quite the hell of a roller coaster. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I have to commend you on checking yourself into onto a facility for PTSD and depression. Like that's huge, man. That's really big of you to do
I
that.
appreciate that.
Most people would deny, forever that they deal with anything. And it's sad that I feel like culturally we've kind of put men in general, but soldiers especially, people who have been any kind of in any kind of service, it's almost taboo to admit that you deal with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, the stigma around mental health is horrible right now, especially in the first response side of things. And
yep.
I'm back in college. I'm going to the doctor of psychology program, and my goal is to start working more with first responders and try to destigmatize some of the mental health stuff within that industry, first responders and military, because like we could be so much more effective if we allow ourselves to actually be vulnerable. We could be so much more effective if we actually open ourselves to compassion and grace. And if you really want police reform, obviously that's a whole nother fucking podcast that I could do with you on my ideas of police reform, and obviously coming from the industry. But the other side of that is if we're going to focus on the individual officer, we got to start working on the mental health side of things.
Absolutely, bro. 100. I back that statement 100%. That's absolutely the case. It's really cool that you decided through the adversity, not only dealing with your partner just kind of dipping on you, but then dealing with the societal circumstance after coronavirus hit, choosing to downsize to keep the business moving. It's also huge. A lot of people that I know full on threw in the towel, and I couldn't really shit on them at all. Like I couldn't hate on them for doing it.
No, I get it.
I understood, but at the same time, it's refreshing that there are more people that are that are pushing through it. Like when it hit us, I saw damn near 50% of my students drop off, and it was really rough because we were in a good spot at the time, and then like I'll say maybe 40% of the students terminated their memberships, and thankfully our landlord at the time was understanding enough that he pushed off all of our dues until things started to circulate again. But I mean, that was April of last year, and we're in June now, and we're just starting to see a glimmer of where we were before coronavirus hit. And it's absolutely crazy what it's done, to everybody's psyche.
Oh my God. So bad.
Yeah,
so bad. Where in Florida are you at again?
We're in an area, a little spot called Trinity, right around Newport Richey, Odessa, Tampa Bay, like that whole area.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna be down in Tampa in July. I'll be running a seminar at my buddy Joe Battle's school.
Oh, dude, Battle. Hell yeah. That's awesome, man. Hell yeah. That's really dope. And it's also really cool that you stayed with KMG all these years. It's really awesome.
Actually, I'm not anymore.
Oh.
Well,
I'd like to hear about that.
I'm not with KMG USA. I'm still with KMG internationally. And there's a lot of politics that go into it, just like any other freaking organization.
Yeah.
I was on the USA national team, and with my friend Rebecca and Joe Battle, and
Yep.
Al had made a couple business decisions that we disagreed with, like vehemently disagreed with. And he brought on this outside guy who had worked with a couple other Krav Maga organizations, but his business plan was, let's go for quantity, not quality. And
Mm,
the whole reason for me sticking with Krav Maga Global for so long was our quality was so high, and our constant evolution of techniques and tactics, and we have to constantly go. Sometimes it's not the person failing the Krav Maga, it's the Krav Maga person failing the person. So for example, one of the things that we do on the expert committee and the international team is we meet once a year, and they'll say, all right, expert ones and twos over here, threes, fours over here, fives, master one over here, right? And what they'll do is they'll present us problems. They go, hey, this is a problem. So let's take a straight knife stab, right? They'll say, this person got stabbed, and we watched the CCTV and we watched all this, and it worked. They did it perfectly. They did it exactly the way we told them to, but they still got stabbed, and they still, ended up with a perforated lung. Understanding that in a knife fight, you're still going to get cut, you're still going to get stuck, okay, but we're trying to minimize the damage.
of course. Yeah.
How can we minimize it even more, and it's still applying the same principles that we are already using? So how can we fine tune this? And really, literally, the changes are a matter of how much more you move the body, just a little bit. It's stupid little things, right? Pistol from the front is the easiest one for me to show via evolution, but again, I could go on a rant about that. But the point is that we are constantly evolving, constantly growing, and then our testing standards. I was on the national testing or national team. I was in charge of the national testing committee, and I was also in charge of instructor development. So, being that AL wanted quality for so many years, I pushed quality. So I failed a lot of people. And it wasn't because they were bad practitioners. They were doing the best they possibly could. And a lot of times, I could see that where their instructors were failing them by, it was the kind of that, I'll just keep feeding you so you keep paying me,
Totally. Yep.
and instead of, no, I'm going to expect quality out of you. Right.
Yep.
And the one thing that Krav Maga in general, this is an industry-wide problem, is that we've yet to realize that people, they yearn for that quality, not the quantity. They don't actually want the fucking belt. They want the quality of instruction. They want to actually know that they're getting better. And
Yep.
so now you got like worldwide and alliance that, so many classes you get your next belt, so many classes you get your next belt. And I was like, that's the dumbest fucking proposition ever. You could be a jiu-jitsu practitioner for 3 years, and then you get a blue belt,
Yep.
because your quality just wasn't there yet. And then you got young Nicky Ryan who gets black in like 3 years or some shit like that. But again, his quality was really high.
Yeah.
So the Krav Maga industry has yet to realize that people yearn for that quality, that the belt really doesn't fucking matter. So within the United States, I now have started my own affiliate. It's the Invictus Fighting System. I've taken the whole Krav Maga curriculum and kind of remapped it a little bit in a way that makes a little more sense, and it is a little more user friendly for the practitioner. It's a little easier for the instructor to teach as well. And then I'm a striking snob. One of the things I will grade people down on the fastest is shitty striking. So we put a lot of emphasis on level one in being a good fighter first. I mean, what was Emi? Emi was a boxer and a wrestler. It was the first version of MMA. The knife, the stone, the stick, the guns, all that didn't start showing up until the late 60s, early 70s, as Emi was transitioning from the military into the civilian application.
Yep.
The pistol stuff wasn't added until AL added it in the late 80s. And so that didn't even exist until AL did it. So some of the baseball bat stuff that got changed in the 90s and stuff like that. So people seem to think that Krav Maga is all about that sexy shit and not about being a good fighter first. So
Preach, bro. Preach.
Right. So our tan belt, like our level one, is be a good fighter first. Show me you can do good Muay Thai. Show me you can defend punches, kicks, and you can engage. You can stuff a takedown. If you do get taken down, you get to fuck back up. Because I'm not going to deal with jiu-jitsu bullshit. Like, why are we scrambling for submissions? Why are we scrambling for chokes when you go to the ground? That's not the purpose of Krav Maga. If you're going to do jiu-jitsu, go do jiu-jitsu. It's a beautiful sport. Keep it in its fucking lane. It's not self-defense, right? You do what you can to get the fuck up and get away. And then gray belt, which is our level 2, that's where we're starting to deal with knife, stone, stick, because all the principles for those defenses are the same ones for the hand defenses from punches and kicks. And then green belt is where you become a coach, and that's where we're dealing with pistol, rifle, submachine gun, hostage, and VIP protection. Brown belt is all of the military law enforcement curriculum, and I actually have a shooting course that's what we were training up at my buddy's cabin all weekend. And then black belt is, what is your contribution to the system? You need to come to me and you need to show me that there's a flaw somewhere. And then you need to come up with a solution based on the principles that we know that Amy and AL have laid out for so many years that we know work. Show me the solution. And then we're going to pressure test the fuck out of it. And, okay, you've contributed to the system. And that's the whole point. We are supposed to be contributing to the system and constantly making the evolution. What is the thing about jiu-jitsu? Like Eddie Bravo, his contribution to jiu-jitsu was taking the gi off and working more on the no gi submissions. John Donner's contribution to jiu-jitsu is attacking the legs and the ankles and the feet. So what is our contribution as practitioners, as an instructor? Are you really an expert? If you're an expert, you should be able to take something, say, hey, there's a flaw with this, and find a way to fix it based on the principles that that system, how that system works. So that's in a nutshell how IFS works, Invictus Fighting System.
That's badass, dude. I really appreciate that. I was I was with KMG for a long time. And the politics, it's I have to say there's
the one from Virginia or the one from Long Beach that fucked it up?
Virginia.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. It wasn't, I don't want to say it was him. It was an overarching set of like politics that seemed to be happening. Like there was almost it's almost like I don't know how to put it, like almost like a gang fight mentality regarding expectations on like what's allowed to be done in inside of someone's own school.
No, that was him. That was all him.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Because I was teaching. I had my school, and there was an issue with my class structure that like there was a little bit of a bleed over in what we were doing in Krav Maga and what I was doing in some other classes that we were running. And it was to the point that it was like the attempt to micromanage and control what I was allowed to teach was way over the top. So I jumped ship because I couldn't deal with it. I did not realize that there was any kind of an option to stay like with the international program as opposed to being in the US program. But
that's something that I kind of negotiated on my own.
I see.
Because what happened was we got rid of the guy from Virginia, right? Because he was just a toxic freaking mess, and he cost KMG USA over 30 schools.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So when the one from Long Beach was running it, we were around 60 schools. When that one took over, we dropped over half. And then by the end of his lower reign, when it became an international team, or when it came in a national team, and Rebecca and I took over, it was kind of like we were the last ditch efforts to save the marriage. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it took Rebecca and I a lot to try to salvage the damage that guy had done. And when we went to schools and we went and did seminars, we did so much pro bono work, and we went and did testing and all this other shit to try to recreate these relationships. I mean, you get burned once, it's easy to go, no, I don't want to do that again because it's bad for me, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, it's that individual caused a lot of things. So AL appointed this guy, the guy who ran a bunch of different or did like the marketing and stuff like that, and kind of was trading quantity for quality or quality for quantity thing. I had a vehement disagreement with him, and he and I got into it pretty freaking hard on a Zoom call with all the other instructors across the country. And I was like, no, the whole purpose of KMG is quality, not quantity. And what you're doing is you're watering things down. If we water things down and then someone gets hurt, what this does is that they say, well, Krav Maga doesn't work. And that's
Yep.
bullshit, because we know it does. And I'm not on board with teaching something watered down, giving someone false confidence, sending them out on the street, and then they get hurt. And he goes, well, this is how we make money. We'll fix it later. And I was like, you know what? Eni said he was going to fix it later with Darren, but how'd that work out? It never got done. So I said, so that's a stupid preposition to have. And then when you have people who are more, it's very easy to get more addicted to the money than it is the mission.
Oh yeah.
And so if we are going to go down this road and we're going to get people money, they're going to forego the mission. And the mission is to make people better. So this guy and I, we clashed hard. And I finally wrote Al a long fucking letter. And I said, Al, I'm not doing this. I'm not working with this fool, at least not in the United States. And he is not going to dictate to me, how I run my gym, how I do things. Like I've been faithful to you, and I've been doing everything that you wanted. I've done everything I possibly can with the law enforcement division, with the national team, with the testing committee. As a school owner, I've done everything that you've ever asked me. But this is the one thing, I will not work with this guy, because this guy's a snake, and he is going to cost you a lot of fucking money with this business plan. And he's like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, Al, I'm telling you, I'm not going to be a part of KMG USA. I will remain, I will pay you individually for my affiliate license and my affiliation as an international instructor, but I will not participate with KMG USA. And so he had a little temper tantrum about that. We had a period of, we're not going to talk to each other. He's just mad at me because I'm bucking the system. Well, come to find out, KMG now has 4 schools. 4.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it's all because of this guy. This guy has driven everybody away. And I finally called Al not too long ago. I was on the phone with Zev, and I was like, Zev, how do I fix this with Al? Because Zev is obviously Al's right-hand man. And Zev's like, you're gonna have to talk to him. And I was like, okay. So I went to Al and I was like, look, I told you. I hate saying that, but I fucking told you. And he's still not really happy, but I mean, we'll make our way back around. At the end of the day, Zev is kind of doing his thing, and I'm a lot closer with Zev's way of doing things. Like there's the technical side and there's the tactical side of things. Mm-hmm. Technical is, it's not this, it's this, right? The tactical side is defend it and beat the brakes off of them, right? Yep. And show me the principle of it rather than the technique. And so that's kind of Zev's thing. He goes, here's the principle of the defense, and then hit them really fucking hard. Okay, yeah. I can do that. I can go smash, right? And so working with Zev has been a blessing on that side of things.
Hell yeah, man. That's great to hear. That's really great to hear. Yeah, I can relate. Yeah, when I left, I went to the IKMF for a really, really short stint. There I found quickly that their politics were just as uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
And so since that, I decided, as non, like in the least egoic way possible, I decided I'm just gonna work on my own system. Based on my experience, I'm gonna continue to cross train, and it served us well. Ultimately I'm teaching Krav Maga, but I'm putting more of an influence than you were kind of alluding to before. One of the crises in schools that teach Krav Maga is that they want to teach all the sexy stuff. And I it's in a comedic way. It's almost like I have my students almost begging for the sexy stuff at a certain point, because I keep them focusing on the fact that they need to fight. They have to be able to bang a little bit, and it's way more about
shit every 4th month.
There you go.
So if you put sexy shit every 4th month, that means they have to come for 3 and then they get the sexy shit.
Yeah. No, that's funny. That's cool. And I agree that it's definitely more about the tactical than it is about the technical. I mean, you need the technical
Yes.
And that's where mass amounts of repetition will fuel the growth in that respect, but the drilling at the tactical level, that's really where the growth's at.
Right.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad we're having this side of the conversation. But so the main purpose why I wanted to invite you into the podcast was I've been wanting to do this series where I talk to people of pretty much all, like, the full spectrum of life path regarding how they view existence in any state. So some people are hyper religious, some people are anti-religious. Although I'd argue that being anti-religious is a religious stance in and of itself, but nevertheless, where do you stand on that spectrum?
So I claim, agnostic. I'm Buddhist agnostic. And I came that way through being a very, very stout, you know, evangelical Christian. So I was raised, I grew up here in the Pacific Northwest, and I was raised at this church up in Vancouver, Washington. And my family stayed there, my entire life. My dad's still at that church. My grandpa's still at that church, right? And the community of people, and obviously this is 80s, 90s, great people. And it was a great, great experience, great community. And it was filled with people, young couples with kids and, of all ages. So it was a very
Yeah.
diverse church. By the time I had gotten to high school, it kind of turned into gray hairs and teenagers. And there was
Mm.
nothing really in between. So the diversity had kind of split and it became very polarized. And my cousin had gone to a seminar here and became ordained. And his first preaching job was as the youth pastor of the church. And growing up in the strict, religious household that I did, you want to argue Bible with me? Let's do it. I from a very young age, we were kind of expected to know it,
Sure.
inside out and backwards and upside down. We'd spend 2 to 3 hours at church every Sunday, because between Sunday school, church, and youth group, stuff like that. And so we spent a lot of time doing that, and that was normal to me. It was fine. Then when I was a teenager, I don't know really what precipitated it. I mean, and I've never, at that stage of my life, I was not a confrontational person. I was very non-confrontational. Well, let me go back a little bit. Third grade, my parents divorced, and this is when the first time I really saw a split in what is being taught and then what is being acted on. Meaning, when my parents split, the community flipped on my mom, and they went after her like viciously, and very slanderously. And I was like, I get that God didn't, obviously I'm third grade, so I'm kind of paraphrasing what's going on in my head and stuff like that. But I'm like,
Yeah.
I know that God said we're not supposed to judge people. We're supposed to love everybody, and, hate the sin, love the sinner, kind of thing. And divorce is bad, whatever. But I don't understand why you guys are being such assholes.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't draw that line. I couldn't figure it out. And what made it even more weird for me is my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, they were still sweet as pie to my mom and my new stepdad.
Mm.
They still loved and cared for her, and they accepted my stepdad, and they were very nice to him, and they were the only members of that side of the family that were actually kind to that man.
Wow.
And I didn't understand that. I was like, well, hold on. My grandparents are coming from the same congregation. Why are they acting so different than these people over here?
Yep.
All the people that I grew up with, why are you guys taking sides? That doesn't make sense. And why are you being so vindictive and mean? I just didn't understand that. And a lot of that, it just kind of came down to your mom, the accusation. Your mom had an affair. She's a bad person. She's going to hell. And it's very fire brimstone type church, right? So it's you're bad and you're bad for life. And it's like, well, hold on here. Aren't we supposed to be able to get forgiveness whenever?
Right.
And the last I checked, the only unforgivable sin was blasphemy. So she didn't do that. So I don't quite understand here. So I was really lost from third grade up into high school. But being a kid, you forgive very easily and you just keep going and doing your thing
Yeah.
because that's just the way life is, right? I mean, it's just okay. I guess this is just the way it is. Nobody would tell me anything in contrast. Um, so I um, get into high school, go to the youth group, and I meet my first girlfriend. And Scott, my cousin, he's the youth pastor. He had just gotten out of seminary. And have you ever heard of the book I Kissed Dating Goodbye?
No.
Okay, good. You're not missing much. Um, so the premise of the book is dating leads to sin because you're going to be more tempted to have premarital sex and the very stalt evangelical Christian mentality of shit, right?
Okay.
Um, and so he took and that when God is ready for you to have your partner, he will just plop that bitch in front of you and you'll just know. And I'm like, well, that sounds very magical. That sounds amazing. However, and so Scott then took the verse, "Do not be unequally yoked," and
Oh boy.
the yeah, and for those that don't know that verse, is basically if I have more faith than Phil's going to drag me down.
Yep.
And I said, well, that's fucking dumb because later it says you will be judged based on the fruit of your tree, which means I just need to be prophesizing and bringing people up. So
Yep.
which is it? Where there's a contrast there. And so, but he took that and he took I Kissed Dating Goodbye. You would have thought he was a paid advertiser for that fucking book. But he pushed that one really hard. And so basically he kind of made this platform rule, unofficial rule within the youth group, which is nobody dates, period. And if nobody's dating, that means nobody's having sex. And if nobody's having sex, nobody's sinning. Oh, right. And so he is like, he figured this out. And he and I would get into these fucking debates. And I was like, Scott, that's not what it says. It says this. And we go back and forth for quite a while. And I was like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And I continued to date the girl I was dating. And even she was like, this is freaking weird. And we were getting pressure from all sides. We were getting like the kids that I grew up with are now in the youth group. I mean, we grew up literally from like before preschool till high school. Like this is how long we've been around each other, right? And we're catching flack from them, and we're catching flack from my family, and it was just a lot of pressure from all sides. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. There's too many contradictions here. This do not be unequally yoked, but you're going to be based on the fruit that you bear. And then it just none of that makes sense to me. And God's just going to throw someone in front of you. That doesn't make any sense. And so one of my analogies to Scott, I said, well, Scott, when you go to a car lot, you don't go, God, show me the car that I'm supposed to buy. And it just shines, brighter than the other ones. You test drive a few cars, figure out what's going to work for you, what's going to work for your budget, what's going to work as far as like, cargo or mileage or gas or whatever it is, the mission that you have going on in your life at that moment. I said, so that is the premise of dating, is I'm going to have to try to, figure out the personality and the ins and outs of this. And no, I mean, sex is not everything that a relationship is supposed to be predicated on. And I still maintain that philosophy, but it's definitely a key point.
Yeah.
It's definitely a big part of it. And but again, the evangelical Christian side of things is we're going to neglect that. We're not going to talk about that shit. We're not going to deal with that. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So there was a lot of confusion there. So ultimately, I got pulled aside and I was told I was a bad influence on the youth group and asked not to come back.
Oh, no.
And this was my first experience with abandonment and betrayal because no one else in my family defended me. And they took Scott's side on the thing. And so obviously at teenage level, you don't really understand what abandonment and betrayal is. You just feel hurt. It doesn't come out until you're in your 30s and your shadow self to say, hey, let's do some work, bitch. Right. Yep. So that's kind of my experience with the Christian church. Now, I maintained Christian values. I maintained a Christian philosophy, and I still read the Bible, and I still, adhered to a very Christian lifestyle. And I use air quotes in that based on what the kind of the expectations were that I grew up with, right? Joined the military. And obviously when you get in the military, if we want to cure racism, mandatory military program. And end of story. Because
I've heard that
I grew
before.
up, I grew up in a very, white neighborhood with white friends. And, I think in the elementary school I went to, like, there was like 2 Black kids. And then I went to a middle school where there's like, it's like a 80-20 white to Hispanic, and I went to high school where it's kind of like 80-20, and that 20 is the Asian, Hispanic, and Black, mixture, in there. And the 80% is white kids. So like I grew up in a very white, it's the Pacific Northwest, it's cold. Island people, and they don't like it up here, and Portland's just not as much as they scream diversity, it's just not as diverse as they like to scream about.
Yeah.
So I go in the military, and now it's a Crayola box. Like it is, you've got everything there, right? And that's when I was like, oh, okay. And I'm getting to know these people, and even though I was raised in a very white community, white this, white that, all that other shit that I just mentioned, my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, they had the biggest influence on my brothers in my life, because I had working parents. They were off doing work stuff for Tektronix and Xerox and stuff like that. And my brother and I, after school, we'd go to my grandparents' house. They helped us with homework. They basically raised us, for a good chunk of our life. But they raised us with, and it sounds cliche at this point because the way our fucking virtue signaling society is they raised us based on Dr. King's, dream, which is you judge someone based on the content of their character, not on the color of their skin. The color of their skin does not fucking matter.
Yep.
It is who they are and how they treat you and how they treat the people that you love. That's what matters. Because there are evil white people just as they're evil Black, Hispanic, Asian, right? And evil is evil, period. End of fucking story. And if the Christian side of us says that we love all people and we are to be accepting of all people, then that's what it is. You accept that person for who they are and how they act towards you. Okay, I'm down with that. That makes sense to me. So I'm getting to know these people in boot camp and infantry school and military police academy and canine school, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm getting to understand all these different cultures from different areas of the country, these different experiences, and I'm dealing with people that are already dealing with alcoholism and other people that come from abusive, trauma-driven childhoods and upbringings, and I've got just this palette of people. And being a natural empath, I'm just soaking it all in. I'm just like, I want to know you. I want to know everything about you. And then I got my first, mixed race roommate. He was a Puerto Rican from the Bronx. And if you don't know Puerto Ricans from the Bronx, they don't shut the fuck up. They're mouthy, and I still love that man like he's my brother. He and I fucking duked it out one day. But he comes in with the iconic New York do-rag, and just loud as fuck, and just, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this guy? But I learned how to love people for who they are and how they treat me and how they treat the people that are in my life. Okay. And so again, you want to eliminate racism, you put everybody in the fucking military. That's how we get there. So I start going to a couple different churches in the San Diego area, and I started noticing a pattern, is that within the context of the Bible. Now I can speak the most about Christianity because that's the one I know the best. Have I been reading the Bhagavad Gita? Yeah. Have I been reading the Quran? Yeah. I've got copies of both, and because I want to understand them. I'm also, obviously I claim Buddhism, so I do a lot of study on Buddhism as well. And then one of my business partners for a little while was Hare Krishna, so I got to understand the Hindu side of things. So within the scripture, there's 10 rules. They were literally etched in stone, right? There's your 10 commandments. Your 11th rule: I am the way, the truth, and the light, and the only way to heaven is through me. There's 11 rules to fucking live by. It's simple. But what does the church as an organization do? They add more rules, and they add rules that are not in that fucking book. And if you really notice, and I'm going to pick on Christians here for a second, is that most of them, they are sheep, they are the flock. And so they because we've given them that label, we've given them that name, the organization has given them that name, right? What do? They act like sheep. They just follow, and they mindlessly follow, because that's what a sheep fucking does. It's mindless. And so what it does, it just keeps its head down. Yep. And I go where the shepherd brings me to the grass, and I eat. And so what's happening is people aren't reading the Bible for themselves. They're not reading what's actually in there. Or what they're doing is they're reading along with the pastor. Yep, that's what it says, right? And then they just take the pastor's word for it.
Yep.
And so there could be a contradiction from the time you put your eyes on it to the time that you hear it. And the human brain picks up auditory better than it does, reading, visual. So, given that you have that dichotomy there, people are following just that what's being spoken, not what's being here. And that's why guys like Joel Osteen or TD Jakes, that's why they're multi-millionaire, pastors, because they're motivational speakers. They're not really, they'll reference a very small segment of a scripture, and then they'll blow it up into a motivational Tony Robbins speech. And so these guys are masters of neuro-linguistic programming. They do a phenomenal job at it. And if you don't know what NLP is, you're going to be a victim to it real fast. And so I was like, oh, okay. So now the organizations are adding more rules. So then I started looking at the Catholics. I go, okay, well, you guys got even more rules, right? Know this, know that, know this, know that, right? And I was like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense. And if I am the Lord your God, you will not idol any false gods before me. Why are you praying to Mother Mary? Why are you praying to saints? That's not God. And it explicitly says this in the Bible. And Catholics are not told not to. It's implied. You don't need to read the Bible. We'll interpret it for you. You're not smart enough. Right? And so I was like, well, that just that one rule right there, right? I am the way, the truth, and life. The only way to heaven is through me. I'm your Lord your God. You will not idol any false gods before me. Those two verses, right, are in direct contradiction to exactly how they practice. Now, let's not even mention the scripture that says you will not confess your sins to a mortal man. We're not going to even go down that road, because guess exactly what they do before service. They climb in a box and they tell a mortal man their sins. And a mortal man who I'm not blanket statement all of the Catholic priests, but who's had the biggest sex scandal? It's the Catholics, right? And so I'm going to get in there and I'm going to, confess all of my dirty laundry to someone who is just as sinful and as dirty as I am. That doesn't make any sense. And then he's just going to tell me to go do this ritualistic thing, which is also within the scriptures. You will not, what does it say? In essence, it's you will not use repetitive words as a way of praising God. I can't remember the exact verse off the top of my head at this moment, but that's essentially what that is, right? It's, you're not going to chant. You're not going to do repetitive chanting. But what do? Hail Marys and Father B's. And that's how you get absolution. That doesn't make any sense. There's contradiction there. So why are these organizations adding more rules to it than what's actually in the scripture? Because the scripture actually gives you freedom. You can do what the fuck you want with your life. But what does an organization want? Control. Now, who recruits even harder than any military branch in any of the countries? The fucking church. And why is that? Because historically, when we think about this is how wars were fought. They were fought on ideology. They were not fought on oil or politics or, the shit that we fight wars for now. They're fought based on ideology. I am right. You are wrong. I am in the eyes of God. You are not. And therefore, since you are not in the eyes of God, we will give you a chance to follow what our God says, right? Or be destroyed, because we have God on our side. And they're like, no, we have God on our side. And so now there's this clash of ideology. And so this is how, millennia of wars were fought, or, and so I'll go, well, okay. So whose God is right?
Mm.
And then I go to Iraq and I meet Muslims, right? And we have interpreters from different countries. They're cleared by the CIA and the FBI and stuff like that, and they're embedded with us. And one of my favorite interpreters. We never got to know their real name. We just went by what their CIA name was. And Jojo was from Sudan, and he, for being an uneducated in very loose air quotes, Sudanese man, he knew the Quran inside out and back and forward. And so he really was able to explain to me the essence of Islam and being a good Muslim. And and he was able to go, this over here, that what we're fighting, this is an ideology. He was still well versed enough within the world that he was able to go, look, think of like the fundamentalist Mormons, the people who are locking themselves away and still doing polygamy and stuff like that in the United States. He goes, in the eyes of everyone else, they're radical. These people that we're fighting, that we're getting into gunfights here, they're the radical Muslims that we don't understand how they came to this conclusion. And so I was like, oh, okay. So now I've been around Muslims, I've been around Christians, I married a Catholic. And I'm like, so I'm picking apart all of these extra added rules and stuff like that. Then I meet a Buddhist. Buddhist explains his philosophy. Then I meet a Hindu. He explains his philosophy. And I come across a couple atheists and they explain their philosophy. And I kind of came to and I'm a philosophy nut and a history nut. So I had also gone down the road of Greek and Norse mythology. And my stepdad and his family are huge into the Native American culture. And so I got to hear all these folk stories. And so I was like, well, okay, what is the common theme here? The common theme here is there is a God. There is a supreme energy of some fucking sort. And then it has its chain of command underneath it. Whether those are other gods, whether those are demigods, whether those are saints, whatever they may be, they have that. And then they have these human prophets who then have these dreams, who have these visions, and then they inscribe that what they believe God is saying. Every world religion has this. And even though Buddhism is a godless faith, right? It's a godless, there is no concept of God within Buddhism. And Buddha himself even says, I am not a God, I am not a deity, right? The way to being a Buddha is to find your enlightenment. Your path to enlightenment is going to be different than mine. And so all of them have this, and they all have the same rules. The same rules are, don't fuck with somebody else, don't fuck with their property, don't fuck with their wife, don't be an asshole, and love God. Okay, that makes sense. But when we take the 30,000 foot view of all those world religions, they all say the same thing. Okay, well then which one's right? Which God is correct? Is it the same God? And the prophets have changed and they're only saying that what they can conceptualize based on their culture at that time in history. And now as we're getting more into the psychological study of DMT and psilocybin mushrooms and stuff like this, this is something that I'm starting to study, so I'm not going to claim expert status on this. But what is DMT known for being accredited as being? Is like the God pill or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Where you have the deepest, most intense connection with life and death and the supreme energy. You get that on DMT. And so I go, okay. There's other little things, within the religions, that we are a like image of God, that we are the creation of God there, and all that God amongst all religions is all seeing, all present, all knowing, stuff like this. And then if we're made in the likeness of God, right, now the line that I'm drawing is I go, well, then in that case, there is an aspect of God within me. So, who's the author? drawing a blank. I got a lot of brain damage here, so you have to forgive me on some of my spaces.
All good, bro.
But there's a quote from a book, and it came to my attention through the movie 13 Hours, which is all of the
Great
gods,
movie.
all of the heavens. Yeah, no, right? All of the gods, all of the heavens, and all of the hells are within you. Oh, well, what does that mean? Well, all of the gods, all of the heavens, all the hells. Well, what are all of the hells? All of the hells is our suffering. Every world religion says that life is suffering, that you're going to suffer. Christianity says the world was turned over to Satan to rule because we had been given free will, and that it is our responsibility to then continue to find God, right? And this was made very clear in the book of Job, where God makes a bet with the devil that no matter what you do to this man, he will continue to find me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so so basically, all of them say the same thing. Okay, all of the hells, that is our suffering, all the hardships, all the pains, everything that we go through. All of the heavens, those are all of our rewards, all the things that we can find joy and peace and love and grace within, and they give us the warm and fuzzies, right? Those are all of our heavens. And then all of the gods. Well, who do we go to when we have a problem? We pray to God, right? And so all of the suffering, all of the joy, and all of the solutions. When I hear of what is all of the gods, right? It means all of the knowledge of the world, all of the things that can solve these suffering problems are within you. What is the tenets of Buddhism, right? The Four Noble Truths is there is suffering. You can eliminate suffering. You eliminate suffering through the Eightfold Path, right? Or you can eliminate suffering and you do it through the Eightfold Path. An Eightfold Path, in essence, is don't be an asshole. Okay, so I understand I'm kind of getting really deep in the fucking weeds here. I'm just trying to draw this all out
You're
as
good,
I
man. You're
possibly
good.
can. So I go, okay, so all religions have this same basic philosophy. Who's right? And then I have to say, well, then the prophets are really just speaking the language of their culture. So I can't say that any of them are wrong. Okay. And then when you add in the man component, what are we? We, by nature, we're very power hungry people. We are, you put somebody in charge of anything. You know, I put you in charge of my business. An aspect of you will be imprinted in my business because that's just the way that's going to work. Right.
Totally.
You put me in charge of your gym, you're going to get an aspect of me imprinted on your students.
Yep.
Well, if we do the same thing, I make you the head of a church.
Mm-hmm.
And under your philosophy, your understanding, your conception is going to be imprinted upon the followers. So who says that you're right? Because dreams, according to Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, they're interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how have we taught children and how have we taught lessons of life throughout the centuries and throughout the millennia? How have we taught people? We've done it through story, right? Okay. Yep. So if this is the everything that you hear from the Native American culture, it's not don't do this. They tell it to you by way of story. The same thing, you know, within a lot of cultures, they use metaphors in order to emphasize their morals, their values, and their points and their beliefs. They don't tell you outright, do X. Like we're like one of the only cultures that really does that. And so they do it by way of story. And what is the Bible? What is the Quran? What is the Bhagavad Gita? It is a collection of stories that each one of those tells us something about our psyche, about our ego, about our malevolence, about all the aspects of life.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, if Adam and Eve are the only two people on the fucking earth, right? Who the hell is recording what the hell they're doing? You know, it's impossible, right? All right, so Adam and Eve have Cain and Abel. All right, so now there's 4 people on the earth. However, one gets jealous of the other. What the fuck is there to be jealous of? There's 4 people on the fucking earth. You know, And so one kills the other. Now we're back down to 3 people on Earth. Okay, well, how did we get the rest of us? And if the world is only 6,000, according to the Christian faith, if the world's only 6,000 years old, our population should be much, much smaller, right? Yeah. So there was a lot of contradiction. I'd start piecing together, and all of the world religions tell the same exact story. They all tell the same fucking story. It's just in the language of that culture, of that region at the same time. And how is it that all of them started roughly about the same time? There is no fucking way that the tenets of Judaism got all the way over to China, or to India, or the tenets of Hinduism got all the way, to the Nordic regions, there's no fucking way. So I think they're all seeing and experiencing the same things through their prophecy. It's just they're explaining it in that what they can conceptualize at that time. You and I could drop DMT at the same time. We're going to have completely different conceptions of what that experience is like, sure, and how we report that, right? And then it's about finding those people to follow us based on our influence and how we do this. And because we're power hungry people, we're going to add extra rules to it. So that's kind of how I got to that point where I just said, what, I think they're all right in their own respect culturally. There's not one right thing. And then I cannot, like, I was just about my buddy's cabin. My buddy's cabin is out in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like it's an hour outside the nearest town. He's got 75 acres, and it was a no moon weekend. There was no moon this weekend up in Tenasket. And you go out into his driveway, you kill all the lights in the cabin, and you look straight up, and it is just this ginormous blank of stars. And if we really can, we go straight, Neil Tyson DeGrasse, and I conceptualize that. I go, each one of those is another fucking galaxy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy fuck. And each one of those galaxies is hundreds of billions, if not millions, or trillions miles, light years wide, stuff like this. I go, well, goddamn, like, how can I can't say that this is all an accident. I can't take the pure the atheist evolutionary stance. I can't say that there's not something that created this. There's no way that this shit happened on accident. And there's a great book called Fearfully Wonderfully Made, and it explains, like, yeah, our bodies are a construct of evolution, but everything falls together so perfectly that we can't really explain how it happened so perfectly, that everything is so harmonious and so in balance. So there has to be a reason for that. And that reason has to be something that we cannot yet conceptualize, something that we cannot yet grasp. So there is a God or a vital life force or source or whatever, but what that is, who that is, I don't know. And so I won't say that there isn't, because it's mathematically improbable. I use that term as amateurly as I can, but that all this happened by accident. But yeah, down to the individual dogmas, I can't say that one is more right than the other.
Mm-hmm. I can respect that. So getting behind the idea that none of them are more right than the other or more wrong than the other. They're all a collection of stories. That there's enough evidence in our existence and in reality to point to some kind of a source. What do you
let me shut this real quick, because I don't want to hear this lawnmower anymore.
You're good, man.
That's good.
What would you say is what's our grander purpose here? What do you feel in your gut?
I think that our purpose is to, like, everything is energy. What is the sun? The sun is energy. The stars, burning balls of gas, that's energy, right? Everything within the universe is energy in some way, shape, or form, right? Black hole, that's fucking energy. I think our purpose is to produce as much positive energy as we possibly can to combat that equal and opposite side. You can't have one without the other. You can't have light without darkness. You cannot have a sun without having a black hole. It's, and obviously I'm not a quantum science person, but at the same time, you've got, every coin has two sides, period. You cannot have happiness without sadness. You cannot have love without hatred. You cannot, it's impossible. And so if the universe is constantly, and everything within the universe, and when I say the universe, we can even take it down to the micro level, that what us scrawny little fucking humans are doing, right? Everything is pulling in its opposite direction, right? Mm-hmm. It's this grand game of tug of war. I think our goal is to bring as much positive energy to it, because we are naturally, I take in the Freudian question, are people inherently good or are people inherently evil? I wouldn't say that people are inherently evil. I believe that people are inherently self-centered, and that I will do whatever it takes for me to survive. That what I love to survive, and fuck you, I don't care. If you have it, I'll take it. Right. Yeah. And that's, we can say that now because we have first world problems. Yeah. But if we were living third world problems, or we're living in the very beginning of time where things were very caveman, right? You have what I need to survive. I kill you. You're no longer my problem. You're no longer a threat to me. And I take that, what it needs to, to feed my family.
Right.
And we still do these things. Mm-hmm. You see it in a much more refined manner within the business world. You see it in a much more refined manner in how we run our relationships. You see it in a much more refined manner in how we do anything. Yep. And it's to the point now where we fail to even recognize it for what it really is. So I think, given that that's the natural nature of things, our main goal is to counter that energy. Because again, every world religion is, don't fuck with other people, don't fuck with their stuff, don't fuck with their spouse, don't be an asshole. Okay. And how do you do that? Right. You do that essentially, and every single faith has essentially its own eightfold path. Every faith base has its own how to basically how not to be an asshole kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Right. So within the eightfold path, you have the right mindset, you have the right speech, you have the right, all of them have the same thing. So I think that is our mission. Our purpose is to live out those tenets, to counter that negative energy that is naturally there.
Yeah, I think I can totally get behind that. The idea is just to spread peace and positivity everywhere we go. Right. I can totally get behind that life path.
Yeah, and the Jungian, studying depth psychology, Jungian, you can't have the self without the shadow self. It's impossible, right? Yeah. And even Jordan Peterson has done a really good job of highlighting this in a lot of his talks, which is, mm-hmm. You cannot be a good person without understanding your own malevolence, and those two energies are in contrast to one another. So, but our goal is always to bring goodness to those around us and those in our life. So, we still have to understand that darkness. We still have to be able to combat it appropriately.
Absolutely. One of my favorite Jung quotes is, I'll butcher it. I'm not going to do it verbatim, but essentially, any tree whose branches reach heaven, its roots certainly reach hell.
Yeah.
And you have to be, any of the old religions, if you dive deep enough into them, you'll find that essentially there was a firm understanding of the dualistic marriage of the different energies. If you go back to like Kemet, there's the there's the divine masculine, divine feminine, and on one side of the scale or the other, you can argue that one is the positive and one is the negative, when in reality they're just aspects of the whole.
Correct.
And that's, yeah, it's definitely, I think, like the way that you're outlining the purpose for life, it comes down to acknowledging, to stick to the Jungian idea, acknowledging that we possess all aspects, and essentially to align oneself with the goal and the practice of positive life and treatment of others. And if we could all do that, I'm sure we can agree that life would be fantastic. But but alas,
That
that's,
fucking ego gets in the way, though.
it does, man, it does. Um, and so I have to ask, and I can certainly cut this out of the podcast if
It's
you
okay.
would rather me not ask it. But um, you kept bringing up DMT and psilocybin. Have you had any experiences with those?
And not yet, but I'm right on that verge, and a
Hmm.
lot of that is, I mean, I'll admit it, I'm scared. I don't know. Like
Respect, bro. I got it.
yeah, I'm at a point where it's like I want to understand it. I want that peace. And everybody who I know and who I've talked to and who I've listened to who've done it has walked away with this level of peace. My fear is that my anxiety
Hmm.
or my PTSD flares up when I have a bad trip.
Yeah.
And I told like Big Mike, he's one of my coaches at the gym. He's super chill. Like he and I are really, really tight, and he knows my traumas, I know his, kind of thing. And it's like one of those, like, if I do this, I need you in the room, not as my comfort, but if I get squirrely, I need you to fight me. Because he's about the only person that will be able to fight me, physically. So it's like, okay, if I have a bad trip, because I have fought people on bad trips before when I was a cop. Like,
Hmm.
so it's like, okay, I need someone here who can actually fucking fight me for reals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and so so anytime I think about hallucinogenics, the first thought that comes to mind is some of the people that I fought on them who are
Hmm.
having bad trips. And so I'm like, do I really want to go through that? Do I really want to, do something, that I'm going to regret later? But the other side of that is I go, okay, you have to go into it with the right mindset. There's that good documentary on Netflix about psychedelics. It's got all the different celebrities, Sting
Ah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot. And they all make a very good point. He goes, if you're going into this, and even Dakota Meyer talked about this on the Jocko podcast not too long ago, where he said, if you go into it with the idea, I'm going in there to do some work, it's not going to be fun, but you get the discoveries that you need in order to get you past some of the little humps and to help you achieve acceptance and achieve these things. So I'm right at it's like I'm bungee jumping, I'm hooked up in the harness, you got the thing to me, and I'm standing at the platform looking, and I'm just like, I'm
Yep.
not,
Yep.
I'm there, but not yet.
Yeah. No, I totally respect the hesitation, the fear of losing control. That's definitely a real fear. Um, the this is not an encouragement to do this one first, but no, just do know that on DMT there's very little likelihood that you're going to move.
Mhm.
You're probably gonna kind of go comatose for a little bit, and about 5 to 10 minutes you'll wake up. um
Yeah.
and then
I've heard that. I've heard that, I've heard the analogy, like, if you're going to learn to swim, jump in the deep end first, and then swim towards the shallow end, which is like the mushrooms and stuff like that.
yeah,
Because if you get that hard dunk first, you come out of it, you can go, okay, yeah, I can stomach this, and then you can go for like the mushrooms and stuff like that, the other psilocybin based, products that take a lot longer, an 8
yeah,
hour window versus 15 minutes.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah. um yeah, I agree with you that it's definitely good to take your precautions. Having your buddy there is a good idea. And the truth is, my suspicion is, despite the fact that you obviously carry we all do, we carry our traumas with us. And you're obviously a physically fit person, you know how to fight, and you could be dangerous to anybody around you. I think that you also seem like you're really level-headed, and I think that you're conscious of yourself enough. That's why you're on the journey that you're on. And so I don't suspect, and obviously I've only known you for a short amount of time, but I don't suspect you'll have that kind of an issue, to be honest with you. What I
Right.
suspect is, I suspect that you'll probably be more tranquil physically than you may anticipate. And I think that what you're actually going to deal with, I've done the whole trip sitting thing.
Mhm.
What I think you'll probably end up dealing with is the exposure of yourself in the most raw sense. And it seems that most people that go in with the right mindset, which I can tell you probably will be, um, you'll it'll be more just emotional,
Mhm.
um, like almost a cathartic purging, so to speak,
Yeah.
um,
And
which
I
could be
actually
beautiful.
enjoy those. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
I do enjoy those.
I'm a sucker for those myself. I tell people all the time, like, there's nothing better than a good cry,
Right.
Um, but but no, I look forward, if you ever decide to jump off the bridge with your bungee cord. I look forward, if you're open to sharing. I'd look forward to
Absolutely.
hearing those stories.
Absolutely.
Um, but um, but no, dude, I really appreciate you coming on today. This was a really
Yeah.
good conversation. I really appreciate your story, um, because uh, you decided. So a lot of people that have gone through things that you've gone through can very quickly opt out of acknowledgement of any kind of creator energy and decide, well, obviously, you know. So let me backtrack that statement. Most people that come from any kind of a dogmatic view of the world through a hard religion, or hard religious institution, they will often carry their understanding of the religion into, or they'll imprint their understanding of the religion onto the world. And
Hmm.
so they'll immediately say that no loving God could do this. There's no way there's a God, because God in their mind is only the Christian God, or is only the Muslim God. And because that's the only God that could exist, they'll just they'll shun it from their view, and they'll walk away from it altogether. Instead, you decided to take a more scientific approach to it, and you were honest with yourself, which was, I think, the most important. Most people close themselves off way too quickly, and make way too brash a judgment, and then they stick to their guns with their pride because they don't want to be wrong with what they said.
Right.
The willingness to be wrong and to learn from it is probably the highest form of intellect, that I look for in anybody. Um,
Yeah.
and so I commend you on that, man. You done good.
I appreciate that. I appreciate
but
that.
um, but is Do you have any questions for me or anything like that before we wrap this up?
Um, no, man, I don't have any questions. Like, you ever want to continue this conversation? Obviously, I kind of like Reader's Digest smash this in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I mean, I've got a lot of other examples and stuff like that where I question God. Like what you're saying is, questioning God, and then just kind of tossing it all away. I had an
Hmm.
experience like that, and a couple of them in law enforcement like that. And so,
Yeah.
you ever want to continue these conversations? I love philosophy. I love debate like this, and I love these open discussions that make me fucking think for once. So I'm totally down, and I
Hell yeah.
appreciate you having me on, bro.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. I definitely look forward to a
Sweet.
part two then.
All right, man.
All right, brother. You have a good rest of your day. All right.
You too. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, man.
Bye.